And here we go. We are recording. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mamano, your host, bringing you the country, the world's most incredible, innovative, exciting entrepreneurs making things happen. Today I have on the show a legend. Like if you are in the entrepreneurial world and you haven't heard of Jack Stack, then you are not an official entrepreneur. How's that, Jack? Jack, welcome to the show.
Too much, Dave.
I like you're turning red, Jack. I love it. No, Jack Stack. So, Jack, your bio, it's amazing. It's really long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're going to touch on it, but you are President, Chief Executive Officer of SRC Holdings in Springfield, Missouri, right? And
Yes, sir.
And so, Jack, I know your story well. We met years ago. I figured out it was 2008. I was a student at the MIT Entrepreneurs Organization program called the Entrepreneurial Masters Program, formerly known as Birthing of Giants. You were one of the speakers, and of course, I was smart enough to sit next to you at lunch after you spoke. Got my picture with you. You were like like a visiting rock star, and you're very modest about it. That's why I love embarrassing you a little bit.
Yeah, you're really doing a good job too. I'm sweating. Okay, I'm sweating.
Well, you deserve it. You are an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And Jack, instead of me, telling your story, tell us. This goes back to, I believe, 1983 at a manufacturing company, and they were the management of that manufacturing company was about to do something pretty drastic, and you and the team stepped in to do something pretty incredible. So please share that entrepreneurial journey. That was the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, I believe, and please share that with us.
By 1983, we had worked for a Fortune 500 company, one of the largest companies in the world. And we had been there for 14 years, and we learned all the disciplines of the industrial society, industrial world. It was mostly command and control, and ultimately led to confrontational management. Okay, so it was, in a nutshell, that describes the first 100 years of business. Okay. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, it was the agricultural world. And then we got into the information age by 1980s. And to us, the information age really was, I think the paradigm was really the fact that global competition opened up and the domestic companies had to figure out how to compete against global competition. And global competition came in and really kind of just changed the culture of the country. And the people would come in and they would actually have the audacity to ask our customers what they wanted in their cars and what they wanted in their appliances. And, we were running businesses, and we thought what was really good for the customer was what was really good for General Motors. Okay, General Motors was good for the country, and we lost the whole idea that it was the consumer. And so the global competition came in and had the audacity to ask you what you wanted in your car. And then they went back and then they produced it at a lightning speed and at a really good cost. And we thought they were going to have horseshit quality. And our quality was even better than the quality we had, because at the core of it, it was the way we managed people. It was the way we led people, right? And we then had this revolution. Hemming was a giant at that particular point in time. He had come from Japan, turned it around after the war, and introduced another management fad called total quality management, which we were lead steermen. We had a lead steer mentality, so we all then went and charted off and tried to become, specialists in terms of quality, thinking that was our solution in terms of being able to, revive businesses, and it didn't really work. And then finally, we just got to the point of realizing that for 100 years, working under the command and control ideas of leadership, we had all these levels of overhead. I used to run a machining department. I actually had a portion of a large factory in Chicago with over 500 people. And in order to just get the tools for the person that would work the first operation of a crankshaft, there were 7 people thinking for the crankshaft operator. When we went to Japan and listened to the crankshaft operator in Japan, the crankshaft operator picked up the phone and asked for the exact number of pieces. It was delivered on time. He made certain that his tooling was all set to be inspected, and he produced a part, and everybody was aghast because he had no help. And so we had 7 layers that had been built up under this philosophy of doing your work, nothing more, nothing else. And if 115,000 people did their work, we would have great products. So It destroyed itself in the 80s, and we laid off a significant amount of people from 81 to 82. We were the headlines in the newspapers about International Harvester once being one of the world's greatest companies. We then went on a layoff of 1,000 people a week for a 2-year period of time. And we laid off 100,000 people in 2 years. It was just absolutely devastating. And I was running a factory for them in Springfield, Missouri. I was a plant manager, one of 17 that they had worldwide, and watched all my peers and all my subordinates, close down their factories, destroy cities, and felt the pain and poverty of massive layoffs, high unemployment, high interest rates. Interest rates went to 22% at that particular point in time. And I would walk the shop floor and people would ask me every day after seeing a headline, should I get married? Should I have a kid? Should I buy a car? I was the leader in terms of the organization. I was totally impotent in terms of answering personal questions. And I couldn't believe they didn't understand that we were in serious trouble. Okay, don't get married. Don't buy a car. All right, just say
You're like, no, don't, right?
Yeah, please understand. They didn't understand. They were looking at you for hope. And there was a lot of pressure on us in terms of knowing that we were one phone call away from shutting down the factory, because when we closed the factories, it was hard. No soft landings, okay, no unemployment. I mean, it was rough, and it was then with 12%, there was no place to go to work, okay? So it was really hard at that time. So we would vacillate trying to keep everybody motivated. We did every kind of thing you could do in order to be able to, just say, look, it isn't over until she sings. And if you give up, the bullet's going to come faster. And then finally we called a meeting and said, don't get married, don't have a kid. The economic reality, one or three things are going to happen to us. They're going to sell us, they're going to shut us down, or we're going to run. And if we run and we have no capital, it's going to be an agonizing event. And so to actually, this is the God's honest truth, to get the monkey off of our back, okay, to try to show our organization that we're really trying to do something, we concocted this crazy scheme of going to the people and asking if they wanted to buy the company, in the hopes that somebody in the audience would say, are you out of your mind? You know how to build an engine, but you don't know how to build a company. All right, we're not going to follow you. You don't have any experience. And so we brought everybody together. We pitched them in terms of the three alternatives that we might have. And then we suggested that they might want to try to buy, praying to God that nobody would say yes. And then that would then relieve our conscience that if we did get the phone call, lay everybody off, we then thought, oh, okay, we just, we're clear. Our conscience is clear. And I swear to God, the audience would have followed anybody with any idea that they had. They were petrified. We ended the meeting realizing what we just walked into, and we walked into saying that we'd make a run at trying to buy the company. Again, we spent 14 years knowing how to make a product. We had no idea how to make a company whatsoever. None. You never taught people how to make companies in the 80s, right? And what happened, ironically, as a result of these massive layoffs and the downsizing that occurred at that particular point in time, that's when the entrepreneurs really, really spurted, okay? Because what happened is that we did learn a lot of good stuff in those 14 to 30 years in those big companies, right? We just didn't know how good we were, okay, until we didn't have a job anymore, all right? And so we went on a journey to go buy the company. And we didn't know anything about business plans. I mean, I'd supervised over 2,000 people, and I didn't have any idea of cost, expenses, PBT, inventory turns. My language was on-time delivery and quality control, and make certain that it was on a truck at a certain time and got the engine to the factory to be able to build a next truck. So when I went out to borrow money, I brought the blueprint of an engine, and I thought we had a really good story. We wanted to borrow a significant amount of money, and we had this cause, and the cause was saving jobs. And they laughed, and they just started to ask questions like, well, when are you going to pay this money back? And I sat there and went, wow, that's really a good question. I said, we never thought about paying the money back because we thought you just paid interest on the money. We didn't know that they were going to ask us to pay it back. I mean, I didn't know anything about business. I'd gotten a college degree, okay, and I worked 14 years. And so we didn't realize at that particular moment that there were really two specifications in this world. There's a specification that centered itself around a product and service. There's a whole mess of specifications that center itself around judging the success of a company. I mean, I got a blueprint of an engine. I know specifically how to do it, test it, and install it. But when it comes down to a business, there's an income statement, balance sheet, and a cash flow statement. And that's a totally different blueprint than an engine.
Mhm.
So we spent 2 years knocking on doors, trying to craft a business plan, trying to get an audience of the lending committee. And we learned so much at that particular point in time. After writing 10 different business plans, we realized that, my God, this stuff doesn't change. These net income statements, the balance sheets, they've been the same since the 1400s. We found out that some Venetian monk invented these things. And then we looked at these statements saying, my God, I mean, these specifications have affected so many billions of people, that companies look at this thing and said, lower the overhead, get rid of them, downsize them, change the margins, okay? Show the marketplace, how strong we are by the number of people we're laying off. And so few people could read these statements, okay? I mean, here it was right there that if you wanted to ask me a question about whether you should get married, whether you should buy a car, whether you're going to have a job, you look at the health of the balance sheet. I told you when you're taking an accounting course, you want to understand the health of the company, you understand the health of the balance sheet, okay? But yet, so many of our people, nobody at that particular point in time had any financial literacy whatsoever. We did our job, nothing more, nothing less. Bottom line is that one day we found a bank that was in serious trouble. They were merging and they were closing their offices and they were in a state of flux. And the essence of the Wall Street Journal article was that they really had to have a higher net interest margin, which means that they had to book risky loans. And so we thought, this is the bank for us. So we went to the one bank and we said, we hear you're looking bad. We hear you're booking lousy loans. We got a doozy for you. We didn't even mess around. I mean, and they took it and they reviewed it and they were able to get enough assets, and we ended up borrowing $9 million. And so we got a chance to get the company. Then we had to raise some equity, and so we went to the employees. And the best we could raise on our first go around with the employees was about $65,000, which was a little bit short in terms of what the banks wanted to see as collateral.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And so we went around again. We told everybody on a Friday, please go take the gold crowns out of your kids, piggy banks. I mean, we're buying our jobs here, ladies and gentlemen. And I said, we've got a significant opportunity. And I sent the yellow pad of paper around to the hundreds of people asking them if they wanted to buy in. And somebody actually withdrew $2,000. Okay, so I had $63,000 less than what it was to be able to start the company. I went to the bank. I said, this is all I got. They asked the management team to pledge the support in terms of the loans. They didn't want any of the other participants. They didn't want to chase 200 some people around the country to be paying back a $9 million loan. If we could pledge and give them the net worth of our 13 leadership team, they would consider the loan. By divine intervention, we then got the loan on February 1st, 1983. We got the loan for $9 million. We had to put $100,000 down, certain guarantees, at 18% interest rates, and
wow.
We opened up our door and never looked back. We never looked back. I mean, our first concept is when we brought everybody back in, I said, look, we're going to tell you how bad this thing is. I said, right. Just picture yourself up against the wall and you cannot push this wall back. Okay. There's no more borrowing. All right. There's no more opportunities here. We have to generate cash. We have to generate sales. We have to reduce inventories. So we began to talk a language that we learned when we went out to seek capital. Okay. We wrote almost 50 business plans trying to raise the money to buy our jobs, but you learn a lot by doing those things because every institution wants to see a plan differently. They don't really want to see your plan. They want to see their plan. So we became very, very literate in terms of rejection. Rejection taught us to understand that we really, really had a interesting situation by understanding the metrics of the business. And then we said to ourselves, why in the world, if this is what we want to get to, why are everybody on the same song sheet? Why do we have two systems? Why do we have a system that we judge people on the product and the service, but we don't judge them on the success of the company? I mean, it was crazy. I mean, if you looked at everybody's reviews, everybody's accountabilities, everybody's goals, everybody's KPIs, none of them had any tie-in to the success and the statistics of the business. So we thought, okay, if we buy this company, we will spend the rest of our lives teaching people that if your goal is to have a tremendous profit or a tremendous valuation in terms of your company, why isn't everybody aligned and that be part of their accountabilities and their responsibilities? I mean, if you did that, would you get worse quality? Would you get worse delivery? Of course not. You would have to get better KPIs, or the company wouldn't evaluate. So we decided to throw out the old way of evaluating people, and we decided to use the whole financial opportunities to be able to not only grow the company, make the right decisions, but educate the people, to teach them the whole idea of debt, checks and balances, and then hopes that they would make a difference in their lives, not only at work, but also at home. And we've been on a 38-year run, and we've been very, very blessed for that opportunity.
What a story. So, I mean, from shutting the plant down, losing all the jobs, to you guys going through an incredibly arduous process. And you know, I'm sure everybody thought you were crazy, right? Because that's something that, you know, probably had never been done before to that extent. You know, I mean, all of a sudden you had, what, 200 plus owners of the company? Is that right?
Yeah, but you know, you are the master at entrepreneurship. You know, there's a certain amount of naivety that you have to have. Okay.
Yep.
You're making it sound like we were really smart at that particular time. Okay. We weren't. I mean, we weren't. I mean, we were naive.
You didn't know what you didn't know, right?
The reason that they have high interest rates is so they don't make capital available. I mean, who in their right mind would try to raise capital at 22% interest rates if they were smart?
Right,
okay.
Right. Yeah.
We weren't smart. Okay.
Well, you know, I love the old metaphor that aerodynamically bees cannot fly,
Right.
but they do fly. And why? Well, the bee said, no one told me I couldn't.
Yeah. No, that's exactly true. That's exactly true.
So
nobody told me that we could get hourly and salary people to read income statements and balance sheets, and they've been telling me this even to this day.
Yep. And they want to, right? And
yes, they find it fascinating.
Yeah. So what was the, you remember, you know, let's say 1982, 83, what was the revenue of your factory back then?
So we got $100,000 worth of equity. We got $8.9 million worth of debt. By the end of the first year, I paid out $1,050,000 in interest expense.
Wow.
And then we lost $45,000 worth of, no, we lost $55,000 our first year on $16 million worth of sales. All right. And so our net worth went from $100,000 down to $45,000 with the $55,000 loss. Okay.
Right.
We almost hit the point of being negative net worth, which is the banks were really, you know, the banks were really, really concerned about being negative net worth.
A little nervous. And so today SRC Holdings is doing over, if I'm reading this correctly, there's a lot of zeros here, $600 million a year in revenue. And you employ over 1,600 people. Is that correct?
Well, we're up to 1,800, but who's counting, right? I mean, but we have, I think the biggest thing is for you would appreciate this, is that $100,000 of investment, and we're broad-based equity. Okay, all of our employees are. We have an employee ownership program here. We did from the very beginning. We just it took a while for us to expand it because the banks wouldn't let us go beyond the first 13 managers. But once we got into a real healthy position, we've made everybody has a stake in the outcome. But if you take the first $100,000 that we invest in the company today, that has been converted into about $260 million worth of value.
Wow.
So we have a lot of people in our organization that are very, very flush and very satisfied.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you were a good bet, Jack. And
they were a good bet. I mean,
well, you all were, right? You bet on each other. You bet on each other.
Yeah, right.
But and so really, I think one of your, besides this this great comeback story and very bold, we'll say bold / naive, because I'll put it in your words as well. I mean, great move, but then you what you do is you really credit, and we talked a little bit about it. You talked a little bit about it. You credit, teaching people the numbers, how to read the balance sheets, et cetera, and owning their numbers, right? And this developed into your first book that you, I believe, wrote with our mutual friend, Bo Burlingham, The Great Game of Business. which was really a very revolutionary book at the time, because you were advocating open book management, right? And you know, we were coming from a time that was command and control from behind the curtain, right? The five people that were in the executive office knew the numbers, and that was it. But you said, no, I want everybody to know the numbers. I want every department to own their own numbers, and almost like creating like mini businesses, mini business plans, you know, within the corporation. And you give that a lot of credit to kind of revolutionizing the company, right?
Oh my God, it's not that, it's common sense, all right, but you're making it sound like it was like something superlative.
Well, nobody was doing it though. I mean, nobody was doing it.
Right. Nobody was doing it. And I think one of the reasons, not only the fact that Bo was a great writer, okay, and was able to communicate it in such a way that it was so effective, but I think what made that book successful is that a lot of people that bought that book, they knew in their heart it was the right thing to do. They just didn't have some fool out there that was doing it. Okay. So I look at it more as that we were more like the tackling dummy, you know, that was put into a really, really honest to God, good story, and not by text, but or by practitioner, and that it worked. Okay. And so when people read the book, they go, gosh, I knew that. I just thought that if I would just share that with these people, that would make a difference. And why I haven't done this, I don't have the foggiest idea. My father didn't want me to do it, or the CPA said it was ridiculous, or the lawyer said I could be sued by the SEC, or, you know, there was all these crazy notions on why this power had to be in the hands of so few people. But you got to remember, I mean, I worked in a company that had 115,000 people, and there were only 5 people that knew those numbers.
Right.
So I had a real good reason to sit there and go, look, I'm going to tell people that if you really want to know if this is the place to work for, here's a balance sheet and look at the security in terms of where all the assets are. All right.
Yeah. Total transparency.
It was an honest way. Yeah, it was totally honest way of running the business. But you know what happened is that when we taught them, they taught us, okay, by the questions that they asked and the desires that they had. But then what happens is that those financial numbers become ratios, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at these ratios and income statements and balance sheets and cash flow statements, and they send you messages, which is really cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're an executive in a company, you really should be spending a lot of time on strategy and direction. You should be looking forward and not necessarily behind. And what happens when you get these ratios, you know, you begin to see the trends, you begin to see the messages, and then you determine the strategy based on the directions. I mean, if your margins are bad, especially if it's comparative to another industry, and you know another industry is doing much, much greater than you are, then that sets the direction of what you really need to do and what's possible to do, because the marketplace is doing it. And if you're not doing it, then something's wrong with the way you're doing it. So we had our crystal ball. I mean, this became our, you know, everybody wants this crystal ball. You ask them a question and they kind of give you the answer. Okay.
Yeah.
We would ask the financials the question, and they would give us the answer. They would tell us that, hey, all your eggs are in one basket. I mean, you're heavily invested in one particular market. And do you know that a market has a recession every 6 years? And if you really want to have job security, you better diversify your business and get off your ass and do something about it, right?
Yeah.
So we listened to the messages, we listened to the smoke signals, you know, and that was what really was powerful about the open book. It was not only the identity, the understanding that numbers are nothing more than stories about people, and then you make certain that the people are allowed to tell their stories and held responsible for the stories that they write, okay, which is that whole conceptual idea of the psychic ownership of the line of the financial statement, but they also participate then in the success of it, right? So that's where everybody comes together. I mean, you want to have a team, you know, but you got to have like a score sheet, right? I mean, you got to have, what are you playing the game for if you don't keep score? And if the score is to be able to generate earnings that generate capital that provides growth, I mean, it's pretty cool to be able to talk like this.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody say that the financial statements tell a story. They're storytellers, right? That's a really interesting way to look at it. That's great. So then Great Game of Business was a big hit, and you actually developed that into its own business as well, right? Started the book launched a movement where people would come to your place and you had courses and they would learn how you did it, right?
Yeah, we were a garage shop. I mean, we didn't look real pretty. All right. I mean, we were still a little bit on the industrial society side of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
everybody was getting into technology and all these new buildings were popping up. And we still looked like a garage shop, but yet we would never say no to anybody that didn't want to come in and look under the hood and talk to the people. And most people found it really interesting that when you came into our business, we let you go wherever you wanted to go and talk to whoever you wanted to talk to. And they thought, well, that's strange. What if somebody says something bad? And our philosophy was if somebody something bad, we'll find out that they said something bad and then we'll fix what it was bad.
Yeah, you want to learn. You want to learn,
It was
right?
all kind of the idea that, most of our people were setting their own standards.
Yeah.
And our job was if there was a variance or a deviation of that standard, we were supposed to be there to help them fix the variance in the standard, okay,
Yeah.
and provide the support. And so it started to get real big, and then people wanted to pick us up. They wanted us to book hotels, and then they want us to come up in the airport. But I tell the story. This is God's honest truth. Okay, we had a huddle. All right, this is where we lay the numbers out, and we talk about things of material significance, but mostly what projections are in terms of a given month. And we had a person from a very, very, very famous company come in that was the CEO. And in the middle of my staff meeting, she went into a yoga pose and actually put two of her legs behind her head in the middle of my meeting. Okay. Well, my staff couldn't handle it. I mean, my staff, they were trying to be kind and,
Right.
and she was from California, which is not,
They do that there. Sure. Yeah.
They're more relaxed than we were in the Midwest.
And apparently more flexible.
Yeah, obviously, really. Half the guys or gals in the meetings' mouths dropped open just because of the flexibility. The other ones were sitting there going, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
After that meeting, they finally said, can we have our meeting back? This is getting a little
right.
And so we said, okay, let's try to do it once a month, and then let's staff it. Let's get a hotel room instead of our grimy floors, and then we grew from there. And then we've been doing it now since 1991. So we do have classes, and we share everything. We share our goods, our bads, and we share.
Yeah. You say it's obvious, and really, when you look at common sense and your heart, it is obvious to do, but most people still today don't do it, right? Because it's kind of like they feel like they need to keep things to the vest, and their team can't handle the numbers, and they can't handle the truth, and they can't handle all the transparency. And I really urge these people to study what you've done and read The Great Game of Business. And your second book, the A Stake in the Outcome, continues with that, right? And really treating people like the adults that they are, right? I mean, it's amazing what they will be able to handle if you're honest with them and you allow them to have that responsibility to, as you say, have a stake in the outcome, right? I mean, it's almost like you're trusting them and they're taking it very seriously, which in turn not only helps the company, but I have to think that it engages them so much more to the company, right? They become part. I mean, they get some ownership, but really, it's like their heart gets intertwined in the company, right? And that's like, people say golden handcuffs. We're going to give you some equity, but I think what you're doing is even more so golden handcuffs in the fact that they're not even handcuffs; they're just there because they fall in love with I'm going to say like what the company stands for, the transparency, the trust, and the like they're in the game, right? They're running their department. They know the numbers, and they are allowed to make a difference, which I have to think engages them so tremendously.
Well, I wish there was more people like you that get it. Okay, you just simply get it. All right, and I don't know. It works, and we spent a long time trying to figure out how to get more people to understand that this is a really positive way of doing things, because people already have negative vibrations in terms of your finances, and that they're off by a factor of 6 times what it really is. Okay. And when you get down to it and you do a literacy test with the people in your organization, you're blown away on people thinking that revenue was really profits, and they were never explained the difference between sales and net income. And they're all, but they perceive their own numbers, okay, and then they form their own emotions and their own opinions. And so it's not as if they don't have the numbers anyways, okay. They got them, they're just not right, okay.
Right.
So what this is that this transparency is an alignment, and it is a point of fact that people can make a difference, and they can like each other and respect each other and realize that they need each other. And I think one of the neatest things about an income statement is a lot of people don't know why you need sales and marketing, or why do you need salary people in your organization, or why you need this or why you need that. And how do you explain to them how it all comes together, other than the fact is that, there is a logical sequence in terms of splitting all this up and then deciding who does what and how they contribute to each other, okay? But the rewards of it is just absolutely incredible. So we've spent a lifetime trying to say that this is the brighter side of capitalism, right? I mean, if you really want to save business, then let's really teach people business. And I don't think we really have a very good support system, that gets people really ready to go to work, okay? Really understanding, the whole conceptual idea of what a business really is. And a business is really about people, okay? And that's what it is. And so, yeah, we'll never cease trying to convince people that this is the right thing to do. We actually wrote another book just recently, and that was Change the Game. And that was to try to explain the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and how you can close that gap by business literacy, financial literacy, stakes in the outcome, bonuses, variable compensation programs that can actually be self-funding in an organization, if in fact you can teach people how to make a profit. And the biggest thing is that people are only there's this focus on, I'm afraid of showing somebody how much I earn, because they don't understand that I have all this debt. They don't understand I take all this responsibility. And I've heard a lot of reasons, okay? And people don't realize that profits go to pay bills, okay? I mean, they go to pay bills. So we just have this mindset that they're just too concerned about what the profits are, but they have no idea that your debt is about to crush you, okay? That your debt is about to eliminate your job. I mean, you could massage yourself with all kinds of earnings, all right? But I mean, if you're not understanding where the cash goes and how the cash operates and how the cash goes, you cannot run your house. You can't run your checkbook. So I don't know. It just seems to me that we got solutions here in order to create a better world, and I don't really understand how to put my foot on the gas pedal to get people to understand this and to be able to understand the benefits of it. Okay, because the reasons that they don't do it are totally counterproductive if they're more than willing to sit down and ask themselves some God honest questions. I mean, when people on our company have bad news, they respond better with bad news than my biggest problem is winning with a lead. Okay, it is hard to win with a lead. It is so, when we have a pandemic like this, they just go to work. I mean, they go to fix it. They make the world better. All right, and that's the kind of, I mean, they don't look behind, they look ahead. All right. And that's the difference, I think, with a financially literate person. Okay. They realize that you're going to have black swans, you're going to have up times, down times. Okay. But you got to work together in order to be able to know what kind of a culture do you build in your organization to be able to survive these. And I would tell you the four past black swans that we've doubled the value of the company 5 years after every black swan. And that's been going on for the last 38 years. And we expect that this black swan will get under control and we'll double the value of the business again in 5 years. We're looking ahead. This is what we got to do. And we'll work together to get there. Again, we got this higher law that it's really harder to stop 100 people than it is to stop one person.
So. Well, and when I saw you at the entrepreneurial program at MIT, I went back to my office and I went to a graphic company and I had this big foam core display put in my conference room, which I renamed the War Room, and we put all of our metrics on there, right? I mean, everything, and we discussed everything. And my biggest reason for doing that was I didn't want to have to, as the CEO of the company, I didn't want to have to handle all these problems on my own. I'm like, I've
Yeah,
got great people. I've got A players. Like,
right,
why do I have to like figure everything out? Like, I've got really
right.
smart people that, frankly, are smarter than me. So why is this all on my shoulders, right? Like, let's do this together, because I know they're going to have some ideas on how to dig out of this. So sharing the good, bad, and ugly, and it just spread the I don't want to say the stress, but sometimes the challenge of the situation. And like you said, I had 15 minds instead of 100 minds, but they were a hell of a lot better than just my mind, and it definitely helped out.
I got to tell you an interesting story that you're going to love. Okay, we are an employee-owned company, and we have an evaluation every year, right? And the evaluation consists of 87 pages. We pay $12,500 for this evaluation. And there's all moving parts on it, whether it's a multiple of earnings or cash flow or how much cash we have on the balance sheet. It's a very, very sophisticated, very, very long process. Okay. And then ultimately it takes the valuation of the company divided by the number of outstanding shares. And then we take it to a shareholders meeting of all our associates and they vote on it, right? Prior to that, okay, we have a closest to the pin game, okay, where we ask everybody what they think the stock price is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so remember now, I've got the most expensive bookkeepers, evaluators, appraisers, okay? I spend a lot of money to be able to get to a quantifiable statement that will pass IRS specifications and all the necessary SEC regulations and things of this nature. And then I go out to 1,800 people and I say, all right, who's going to get closest to the pin? You're going to get certain awards on who is ever close. Okay. My stock price that has been, and we've split it 6 times since we first started. So the appraiser came in at $133.11, okay, which is an increase over the previous year. What do you think the associate's average price was?
I can't even guess.
$134.
Wow. Isn't that something?
They were 60 cents off.
Wow.
Okay. How else can I validate? How more can I validate the wisdom of the crowd? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the average. The average was less than $1.
Right.
And remember, there was an 87-page appraisal.
Yeah.
Okay, to get to that 133. I mean,
so it also validated that the next year you didn't have to spend that 12.5, right?
Well, no, you got to do it. You have to do it legally. You got to do it legally.
Yeah, but it was interesting. So, hey, Jack, this has been super, super fascinating. I really, really appreciate your time and everything that you've done. And you're so willing to give back. You're not only doing it for your own companies, you're helping other people, like our good friend Ari Weinswig from Zingerman, who's a great ambassador and disciple of yours, and he's been on the show.
We are of his. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. So, but Jack, and I just want to also say too that not only are you a great entrepreneur and businessman, but you are the full circle of being I'll say a complete balanced entrepreneur, because not only have you done well in business, but your bio, it says you've been married to Betsy for 47 years. So God bless, that is incredible. And 5 children. And then the bio says a grandfather of 10, but you just told me before that it's actually 11.
Right.
So congratulations on all fronts. You see a lot of people that are very
you.
Successful in business, and but their personal health or family lives of not anything to post on the refrigerator. But you're really a great example of just kind of checking every box. So congratulations on everything that you're doing and giving back to help others. Really, really appreciate everything that you're doing and being on the show.
I hope we can always live up to your expectations. You really set high standards. You do an awesome job. I mean, thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. And continued success, and we'll keep in touch. Well, I want to have you on every year just to continue to monitor the success. So
I hope I live that long, David.
I have a feeling you will. So you look fantastic.
God bless you. Thanks for everything.
God bless you, Jack. And hey, thank you, Avanti Entrepreneur listeners. Appreciate you being here. If you want to hear this interview again, AvantiEntrepreneur.com. We have this and over 180 other podcasts, a lot of other services there. Thanks for listening. Make sure to have a great day and stay awesome.
See you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.